Loud. Excellent. So again, welcome. My name is Manisha. I'm the interim director here at UC Davis Health Professions Advising. And today we're going to talk about preparing for your virtual interview. Again, you are always welcome to post questions in chat and call it out. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera so that it doesn't interfere with what I'm seeing. But I am here. Wonderful. Actually, let me back up. I know I gave you a preview, but for those of you who are new today, or if you were here yesterday as a refresher, why do schools interview? They have your full application, they've read your essay and everything you wrote. So why do you think interviews are important to schools?
To see if students fit their mission.
Okay, so to see if students fit their mission. Thank you, Kimberly, to get a better sense of who you are and how you conduct yourself. Great. Any other thoughts? All right, well, to see your personality and interpersonal communication skills, great. So all of these are correct. Schools want to get a sense of who you are, how you fit with the school, your views on the profession you're planning for, and ultimately your readiness. So they're evaluating your readiness for the profession and school. Your grades and scores and anything you wrote got you the interview. But as I've always said, that's a pretty flat profile, right? That's a pretty two-dimensional profile. Meeting you, whether it be in person or virtually, gives them the sense of who you are, as well as how you fit with the school, as well as how you fit with the body of matriculants they're building. So they're also evaluating you in terms of, they don't want to admit, if we just take the average school size as 100 students, they're looking for diversity. That's why a lot of schools ask the diversity question. They're looking for what makes you unique in terms of what you bring to the school, what you bring to the class that they're building, and that there are varying opinions and personalities and ideas, because ultimately when you go out and become that health professional, you will be meeting with folks that are very different from yourselves and each other. And the more diversity they build in a class, the more they output when you become the health professionals we will be visiting. And so again, looking at your personality, your maturity, your awareness, thinking about strengths and challenges, readiness for the profession, interest in the profession, your communication skills, your ethics. So all of these things are reasons that a school will conduct an interview and bring you in, or conduct it virtually. But again, just a sense of getting to know who you are as a person beyond what they've read about you in the application. So what's a virtual interview? What do you think? What are different types of virtual interviews that you've heard about? So MMI is a style of interviewing. So thank you, Peter. And we'll actually be talking about MMIs in a little bit more detail on Thursday. But when you think about virtual interviews, what do you think about? So again, panel, yes, Michael. So that's an idea, Zoom or a phone call. These are virtual. So virtual interviews, one-on-one, again, that's how we may be communicating with each other. So in terms of a virtual interview, there really are two types that I want to frame today from. One is live, which is a video conference that connects you with the interviewer or interviewers. So people are talking live to each other. You're communicating with each other. Q&As, info sessions, live, or there's on demand or asynchronous, meaning video technology, where you are presented questions that record your response. There is no live interviewer or body. So you are recording yourself on whatever platform the school has, and that recording is going to the school as a way of evaluating you. Schools might do one or the other or both. It really varies school to school, as well as health profession to health profession. Some schools, like I said, they're doing both. They're doing, so it's just something that you want to think about in terms of preparation and comfort level. And hearing back from students over the last year, they got used to the live where they got to talk to an interviewer, but the asynchronous or on-demand ones were a little unnerving because you're talking to a blank screen, answering your questions with no face or body language, giving you feedback in terms of how you did, and did you in fact answer the question. So again, we would want to be prepared for both once we know what that school would be asking you. So let's talk about the basics, right? You, as I'm, over this past year, which was really a pilot year of asynchronous, of virtual interviews, you could expect likely multiple interviews. And I'm going to use interviews interestingly, because that interview can, you can be asked to come online at various times of the same day or even different days. Your interview experience, so if you were with me yesterday when we talked about in person, it was the interview day. This is the interview experience is completely planned by the school. In terms of a live one, you might be interviewed by faculty or faculty members, current students. Yes, it could be a panel. It could be an MMI. It could be one-on-one. It can also be potentially an info session. So some schools that would have, on your interview day in person, would have hosted a tour of the school, are now doing virtual info sessions with that candidate body as a group, where they're sharing about their school and giving you opportunities to ask questions. Formats can vary from one-on-one, panel, meaning multiple people are interviewing you, or group, you are part of several candidates being interviewed either by one person or multiple people. And yes, some schools proceeded with doing multiple mini interviews via the Zoom or other technology, moving people around in different rooms. And yes, some some schools offer the option of in-person or virtual. I know somebody posed a question about, if you are given both options, is there any benefit of picking one over the other? And honestly, I don't think there is. I think the fact that they're giving you the option, they're taking into consideration one, they're not wanting, or they're not planning on seeing, hundreds of students that they would have in fact seen before in person on campus. COVID precautions are still in place, so schools still have to be mindful, even though they gave you the in-person option, of what that might look like. So I don't think there is a benefit one or the other. And then it comes to you. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about whether it's driving or jumping on a plane? How do you feel about being in groups, or potentially, being around groups of individuals who also came in on a plane? So I think the schools that are offering the option of in-person or virtual are doing it with the understanding that different individuals have different preferences. It also takes into consideration something that schools never really considered before, is the financial deficit that people go into going and flying all over the place. I suspect that even after COVID, some schools will continue to offer this, because I have worked with students that in their application process suddenly could not afford to fly to their interview. When you're thinking about going to an in-person interview, you're considering a late flight, probably with 1 month or less notice, hotel, food, transportation to and from. It could easily cost, $500 to $1,000 to simply go to an interview. And I think schools are being cognizant of this price tag, and that not everyone can afford that, and that it was an uneven playing field for individuals when they did apply to health professional schools and were faced with, I have to come up with an income, like financials, to be able to afford this. So to answer your question, I don't think there's a benefit of choosing one over the other. You can still present well, whether you're in person or virtual. And so we would want to practice that presentation and strengthen your confidence in whatever format you choose. And so we can talk further towards the end of this presentation, but simple answer, I think the fact that schools are offering both options is wonderful, and I don't think there is a disadvantage of either option, in person or virtual. So, some things to consider when you're preparing yourself for your interview. You want to think about what device are you going to use, in computer, smartphone, or tablet. You want to, make sure that if you have in the past had challenges with your computer, camera, or Wi-Fi, are there alternate options that you can utilize? I know some platforms of virtual interviewing do better on, say, a desktop or a laptop over a tablet and phone. So that is something to consider when you are doing this, is what, device is going to give you the best experience. If your device isn't quite up to par, if you've been having issues, is there a way that you can borrow something from friends and family? I've had many an applicant in the last cycle do just that. Their computer was a little bit older. It was iffy. And so they were borrowing devices. You also want to take into consideration, if you were using one platform, say Zoom, and a school was using another platform, what would it take to get your computer okay? I know that, let's say I did a medical appointment virtually, whatever platform I use for that messes with Zoom for me. So I use, different devices, because I have to actually reboot my computer so that Zoom actually works properly. It takes away the sound, it takes, I cannot get it back without rebooting my computer. So you do want to take into consideration what platform is going to work best for you. You can also check if there is technology available for you at a library, at a local college or community center, or if the institution is offering other options for applicants, or if you're, if there's a health professional school or your institution, are they providing any support or space for you to be able to come in, to be able to do your interview in a neutral location. Do check your camera and mic. I just told you, mentioned the challenge I have if I'm going between platforms, that my mic gets really, really angry at me. If I do a video from Microsoft Teams to Zoom, my mic is extremely unhappy with me, and it's restarting everything. Check your connectivity. How strong is Wi-Fi where you are? I I know most of the time where I sit, my Wi-Fi is okay. But I also have another person in my household that is also working virtually, and sometimes other people in the household that have the TV on. And so if I'm doing something that I need my Wi-Fi to be a little bit stronger, we're having conversations in my household about turning off other devices that are tapping into the Wi-Fi. So do check your connectivity. And forgot how to do that, but you can go on a site on your computer to check how strong your Wi-Fi is. Make sure if you're using a tablet, phone, or laptop that you are plugged in. People know that desktops are always plugged in, but sometimes forget that laptops use up a lot of juice when you're doing using technology for a virtual presentation. So make sure there's a outlet nearby or you're fully charged, and that's not going to be an issue. Funny story on that is I was actually visiting family, though I still was working all day, was using my nephew's room. Underestimated my laptop's capacity to hold energy. And I was on Zoom all day, and I ran out, and this was a PC. I was in a Mac household, not a single charger to be had, and I forgot to bring my charger. My nephew loans me his laptop, which happened to be a Mac. Failing to mention his laptop cannot charge while on Zoom because it was 4 years old. So I ran out of energy twice, which was not a fun experience when I'm trying to be one professional, have all my meetings via Zoom. So I learned a very hard lesson that day is have an outlet and a charger at all times. Make sure you test your virtual platform ahead of time. Do you need to download anything? It's been a while since I've professionally used a Mac. While the PC somehow just made things work, the Mac, I have to like download the app for everything that I'm going to use. So it's a learning experience. So make sure, whatever you have downloaded, you've done way in advance so you don't have issues day of. And also know what to do if you have technical issues during your interview, whether it be the asynchronous interview or it's the in-person. Most important, stay calm. The institution will have a process for handling technical issues and who to contact. So have that ready for yourself of what to do if you have a problem in your asynchronous or on-demand interview, if suddenly you lose power, right? During the last heat wave, we were having power outages in Davis and whatnot with the power coming and going. And so have that ready to go if something should come up, because schools are very particular that you handle it a certain way and that you submit the right forms to take care of it. And stay calm and follow instructions. This has been going on for over 1.5 years. And I think this round of interviews, I think institutions are a little bit more prepared, but you also need to know what to do in a calm fashion. So I would have that, lined up, maybe on another device ready to go, or print it out or written down so you know what to do. Because I have had people where they weren't able to submit their asynchronous interview or power outages in the middle of an interview. So you want to make sure that you are not stressing about that day of, because you know what to do. I'm going to pause there really quickly before jumping into preparing yourself beyond technology, and see if there's any questions that are coming up for folks. All right, I'm going to take that as a no and move on. So let's set up the scene for your interview. And I'm going to share a couple of interesting story admissions. A few admissions folk had set with me, but figure out where are you interviewing that's a quiet and private space and let your housemates know. Perhaps this is your room or a closet or a room in a library. It might be your car, but you want to avoid public and busy spaces. I know for Wi-Fi reasons, I've had some students having their drop-ins or 30-minute appointments with me at a coffee shop because that was the best place that they could find Wi-Fi. That's fine for a 30-minute appointment. Or for drop-ins, that is not okay for a interview where you are hoping to make the best impression, and not because it looks bad, it's because you're going to be distracted by whatever else is going on. And so you want to think about what that looks like. And as I mentioned, you can ask a college, community center, or local health professional school if they might have space. It absolutely does not hurt to ask if that is the concern. I had somebody interviewing from their car, and what I would say, if that's the case where that's the best place you're going to find privacy, I had some folks last year that had a lot of younger siblings that were also home. Is just we're going to set up the backdrop, the best you can, so you are presenting as much as you can, a neutral environment. And do understand, schools do know that the pandemic has, created many a challenge in housing situations, in the number of people in houses and finding this. But whatever you can do ahead of time helps you. What's in your background? Let's create a neutral background. And I apologize for the misspelling, with good lighting. I don't think this means you have to get a circle light. I don't personally have one, but I have test driven my environment in daylight, which is where I am right now. At nighttime, I have a good LED lamp nearby me that as soon as it starts getting dark, that I can turn on, that balances the light, that doesn't give me shadows by where I put it. And so I have been in this location for a year and a half, through winter, through storms. And so again, it's not, about buying equipment. It's about how do we understand what our space looks like and how do we make sure it's a good neutral background. I know some folks had backdrops, used curtains. Something I did, early when we were first working remotely is, initially everyone thinks about your desk against the wall, your computer is facing, is against the wall, and you're facing a room. Well, a couple of weeks into this, I looked around and I realized that gave everybody a preview of all the laundry that is unfolded in the back of my room, and all my children's clutter that is everywhere. That is not very professional. It made me feel like, oh my God, this is a hot mess you all get to see. So I pushed, shimmied around, pushed my desk away from the wall, turned the computer around. Yes, I'm kind of stuck in this 4x6. I made it a little bit bigger, but so 6x6 space, but my back is to the wall. My computer now faces the wall. So the most neutral backgrounds, I'm just going to turn on the video just real quickly. So this is me with my desk pushed out. I don't have a whole lot of space to wiggle around, but again, neutral background. And yes, I tested my lighting with the blinds open, the blinds shut, with the LED light on, to create as much space. Right now, there's some weird shadowy things going on, which if I was actually interviewing, the sun is shining in a certain way today that's creating this large shadow. I might get rid of that, by putting my blinds down and maybe turning on a central light. Hiba, is it okay to have a bookshelf in the background? I think that could be fine. Again, just make sure it's not super distracting. Going back to some things that I've heard from interviewers, Some plants, a clean looking bookshelf. I know what my bookshelf downstairs look like because my children are home and the books are not organized. I've had people that have had pictures all over their wall. Some things that, admissions advisors mentioned concerned about, like it is your space, do with what you want. But one admissions person mentioned somebody had a poster of pot in their background. I know pot is legal. I don't know if I would necessarily have a poster of it while I'm interviewing. And so like my colleague, Doug, he does face into his room. He has a bookshelf. It's very nicely organized, painfully, beautifully organized. I respect that. So I would just say, make sure it's just not distracting. I had one young lady last year, she actually stuck up articles of our publications. And so I was like, that's almost a bit much of what you're trying to sell of yourself. Could we just be authentic? Elliot, absolutely use headset or iPods or AirPods if you need to. You should be able to hear the interviewer. In fact, some of the folks I talk to on the admission sides, they themselves are using headphones or devices. Benefit of that is you hear well. Just be sure of what's going on around you. One presenter I had for a panel was in the midst of a move. She was helping a family member that experienced a sudden loss move. And the movers were going around. She didn't hear them because she had her headset on. We could hear them. And so we just reminded her if she wasn't speaking just to mute so she wasn't distracting the whole space. But again, people are going to be understanding, just be aware of that. But no, please do use your headset if you need to make sure that you're hearing clearly. So it is not unprofessional, but I would check out, what's in your background. I know mine's very bland, and because I know I'm going to be here on and off longer, I probably will put up some pictures that would have been at work here, but again, tasteful, minimal, non-distracting. And that's what we're going for. I would also encourage you to clear the clutter on your desk. Just because you also don't want to be distracted, minimize anything you're not using. Like you don't need your email up on your screen. You don't need anything else up. So minimize it so it doesn't distract you, that in the middle of an interview answer, you're not suddenly hesitating because something, popped up on your screen. Also, I live in the Mac universe, the Apple universe. So if one device dings, everything dings. And so you want to turn the sound off or power down any device that would be dinging during your interview. You don't need that distraction either. I'm a little bit newer to the Apple Watch, and it dings when I get a text, and it vibrates my arm, and that has proven to be distracting. So now I know when I'm doing something, I just turn it off or take it off and put it aside, because there's no need for me to have it during a presentation or anything where I might be speaking. So some of this is minimize distraction, create a clear neutral background, be aware of what might be going on, speak to individuals ahead of time, address pets, children. Many a times pets have jumped into laps or scraped at doors, and these are not things people might think about day to day. But during an interview, you don't need those distractions. So like today, I have told the people that are at home, which is my children, my parents, and my spouse, do not come into the room for 90 minutes. This is my space for the next 90 minutes. Now, mind you, I'm in my bedroom, the bathroom's next door. So if somebody comes in and uses it, there's all sorts of sounds that I didn't know everybody in the Zoom universe could hear, until finally a colleague said, "What is that waterfall?" Well, my wall backs into the shower. That is the waterfall. So again, neutral, right? You want to be able to hear, you want them to be able to hear you. Any other questions about this that you think we should go over? Any other questions about when you think about your space or creating a space? And like I said, do check your lighting at different times of the day. Certain times of the day, you might have a big sun shadow or sun on you that gives a glare. I was talking to someone the other day in drop-ins, and the way the sun was shining through, it was just a glare in my eyes, and I barely saw the individual until they shimmied their laptop a little bit. So any other questions before we move on? Kind of giving it a couple seconds, and I can't see the participants. I'm just looking at chat right now. So you can either unmute or throw something into chat. All right. So let's talk about looking the part in terms of the interview, right? So, the idea is dress professionally and groom meticulously. I currently have COVID hair. It's been a while since I've even made time to go get a haircut. I'm not afraid of it. It's just making time. And so I, might do something about my hair before an interview. In fact, I have an event coming up, a pretty big deal event for health professions advising and the UC Davis campus. So I'm already planning on scheduling a haircut, a week or two before, because we'll be meeting some pretty important people, and I don't want to look like the hot mess hair that I got going on. And what I mean that is, I don't mind the purple in my hair. I just need the hair to be under control and the bangs under control. We've all seen the memes of people wearing half outfits. I'm going to not encourage you, but ask you to wear the whole outfit and not just the upper half. Here's the thing. I've had admissions tell me stories of they've asked somebody for something, and that person might have left like an ID or their notebook at a different part of their desk, stood up. And this admissions person actually said, I wasn't even sure if the person I was talking to was even wearing pants. That's how much bottom half was revealed when this person showed up. And so again, we don't want that to be an issue. Also, there's something to feel about wearing a whole outfit for interviewing. It's a mindset, right? It's not, this is just a thing. When you put on an interview, it's like putting on a suit of armor. You are preparing yourself for what you're about to do. So try on your outfit, sit down with it, and see how that presents. For those of you who are wearing a suit jacket, usually ladies' jackets are cut for when you sit down, that it still lays flat and won't bump up. For some reason, men's jackets are a little, not cut for that. So a technique or trick a male colleague once taught me is, if you unbutton one or two buttons, or at least the bottom two buttons of your suit jacket, if you are wearing a suit jacket, it will actually lay flat and not bunch up against your chest. But try things on. I know that when I interviewed most recently for this job at HPA a few years back, it was post-children. I hadn't tried on my suits, and I made the classic. I tried out, for an interview coming up the next week on a Friday. I tried on whatever suits I had, and not a single one fit, because we're talking a post-maternity body trying to fit into a pre-maternity suit. So there I was at Macy's, just finding anything that would fit my body. I am under 5 feet, so everything needs to be fixed. And I had to sit there and try to find something that fit right now without needing to be taken to a tailor. So let's not put ourselves in that position and just make sure we've got one thing. And that's what I'm going to talk about. You only need one thing. You could wear the same thing for all your interviews, even if that one school is having multiple interviews. Nobody knows, nobody remembers what you wore. They're meeting hundreds of people. So if you have one outfit that fits you, go with it. Oh my gosh, Megan, that's horrible. That's
Yeah,
horrible.
it's taken me over a month to just try to find an outfit. So just an FYI for everyone, it's incredibly hard right now with COVID. Macy's, Nordstrom's, White House, any place right now, they're not selling suits. I mean, it's really low stock. So if you're having, like for me, I have an interview in a few weeks. If you guys have interviews coming up, make sure to start looking right now.
Oh gosh, thank you, Megan. That has always been my go-to. I go to Macy's clearance because I don't care if the suit's out of season. If you get a conservative, classy suit, there is no season. And, I've scored $40 suits, silk suits,
Yeah.
suits. But, that's interesting because I took my kids to try to buy shoes for the school year. And the shoe stores are saying because no one bought shoes last year, they don't have anything in stock.
Yeah, the one place I would suggest if you guys are looking for suits right now would be downtown Sacramento, especially the Macy's there. I just got a suit set 2 days ago, but they're the only place like within a really long ways that is even remotely carrying suits just because the Capitol is right there.
All right. And folks, you might, just putting it out there, other places people have looked, Marshall's, Burlington Coat Factory, Nordy Rack. I've just always gone to Macy's because the clearance section is cheap. That is a good question. Do we need to wear a suit? This answer has a lot of range to it. Many people will be wearing a suit. I know that in person. However, if you see my picture to the side, somebody has a nice fitted classy skirt, a collared shirt, and a sweater. I think she looks extremely professional. I think if you wear a nice blouse with a nice cut blouse that's meant to be worn without a suit jacket, because there are some blouses that are called shells. They're meant to be worn under something in a sweater or in a jacket. So if it's a classy blouse, neutral, I don't think you need a jacket. And I say that there's a range to this because many East Coast schools are pretty conservative still. And so that's a hard thing to answer because I know we are Californians and a lot of times people have impressions about us that we are all beach people. It is not us, it is a bias people hold against us and that we don't know how to be professional. So I'm about, that's where the conservative and classy comes into place. If you have a very classy neutral outfit, I don't think a jacket is needed. But again, I consider the environment. I do recommend a tie for men if that is something you are comfortable with. Or if you are inclined to dress like a male, that is, I do recommend that. Just again, it is what many East Coast schools might prefer. But I would say it just depends on how you put everything together. And if you're virtual, they're only seeing the top half. So again, I've seen, in some mock interviews I've conducted, women wearing blouses, that are meant to be worn without a suit that are very professional looking. And gentlemen wear, a neutral shirt and tie. So I think that is also a benefit of virtual versus in person. In person, you will see suits. I guarantee you that. I used to do MMIs for Stanford, and it was always a sea of suits that looked like a funeral. I always appreciated the one-off person that actually let their personality show a little bit. But like I said, what I can tell you is East Coast schools tend to still be pretty conservative. And so take that for what it's worth. Now, I want to make sure, Kat, we're defining a suit. Do you mean a jacket with a matching pant, or a jacket and a pant, or a jacket and a skirt, or a jacket with a dress shell? Because when I define a suit, I define it as a two-piece outfit that was meant to match. So a suit jacket over my blouse. I don't think you're always going to need one depending on the blouse. So if it's a blouse that doesn't need one, if it's like classy, simple cut, maybe long sleeve with cuffs, a little small collar, I think you'd be fine. But again, given what Megan is saying, that professional clothes are in low supply because we've all been wearing shorts and sweatpants for a year and a half, you may want to think about how we're going to go about purchasing professional clothes. So I don't think so, Kat, depending on the blouse itself. If you're paired with the nice, simple accessories, I think you'd be perfectly fine. Also, speaking about accessories, keep it simple. We don't want anything dangly, long. I have piercings on my face for the purposes of an interview. I mean, it's just a nose piercing, but I've seen people with the full ear cuffs, I forgot the term, but the one that goes between your nose, the eyebrows. Again, thinking about your environment, this is an interview. I would like you to be yourself, but this is still an interview. So we want to present professionally, maybe toning it down. So sleeves are a must. I'm going to say this, yes, because I just watched a recording of myself where I'm wearing what I thought was a professional sleeveless blouse. And oh my God, I look horrible. I look very, very unprofessional in that video. I did not know I looked like that. I wish somebody had told me. Or wide sleeves would be good. Something like capped sleeves. Doesn't have to be long sleeves, but something that is not a tank top. Because after I saw myself, I was like, never again, never again during a Zoom meeting will I do this, because it looks awful on screen. So again, things we're continuing to learn as we're figuring out what professional looks like on screen. But yeah, short sleeves I think are fine, cap sleeves, just not a tank top. I might steer you away. Does that answer some of the questions? And again, Megan, thanks for piping up on that. I know that, again, it hasn't been a while. Like a month ago, I was at Nordstrom Rack. They still had suits or suit-like items available. Actually, for the HPA interview, I wore what was called a suit dress. So it wasn't like a two-piece. I did pair it with a jacket, which I took off during the interview. The sleeves of the dress reached just a notch over my shoulders. So it was sleeveless, but they were very wide. And I took it off during the interview because I got super toasty in the room. So again, we can be creative. It's not about buying the most expensive thing. It's about buying what fits you and what's going to help you feel confident. Any other questions about this? And again, just talking about hair and makeup, it's up to you. I don't typically these days wear makeup. I might slap on a little eyeliner if I'm feeling it. But again, I am going to comb my hair. I am going to put it back during an interview, because I personally have a tendency of continuously pushing my hair back over my ears, and that is a distraction. For those with longer hair, whether you identify male or female, just trim it, put it back so that it's not distracting. Just whatever you have to do so you're not distracting yourself or the person observing you. Any other questions before we move on? All right. So in terms of the interview yourself itself, like again, be your authentic self. When you're virtual, watch where you're looking, right? Looking at the camera gives a better sense of eye contact. So if you're on a laptop, something I suggest is like propping your laptop on some books or a stand. So it's just slightly above or even with the camera itself is even with your eyes. So it looks like you're making contact, or my camera is slightly above. So again, it gives the sense of giving eye contact to the individual. Respond with confidence and show your enthusiasm. So pay attention, watch where you're looking. I've had people wiggle. I've had people tap things on their desk. I unfortunately developed a recent habit of folding and unfolding my cloth that I use to wipe my glasses when I wear glasses. So again, I'm creating distractions that just don't need to be there. So make sure you're distraction free. Sit up straight, smile, focus on the camera. You have your face and upper body to show your connection, to show the rapport and build a rapport. So be mindful of that presentation that you're giving. Like, you don't have to, again, just kind of mimicking some stuff. I don't think anyone comfortably sits like this. Like I have the bum to the back of my chair. I am leaning back. Sometimes I might lean a little bit with my arms on my armrest. I do use my hands for enthusiasm. Just like in person, if I am being emphatic about a point, I might lean forward a little bit to show that this is a emphatic and enthusiastic moment. I might, again, watch my body language so that I continuously showcase to the interviewer or whoever I'm sitting with that I am interested. I'm smiling, I'm nodding, right along, right? I know in the last year and a half, I went from everybody having their cameras on, everybody being unmuted, to folks no longer doing that. I don't know how, I've rarely seen a face unless it's a staff meeting or drop-ins that I might even see a face. So be mindful of that we want to, be present. If you're doing an info session, a virtual info session, please do turn on your camera so they can see you. Like I said, I rarely see faces now during a presentation, even with a couple hundred people in the room. And so this is what we've turned into. We all have Zoom fatigue. So that is not okay on the day of your interview or info session, right? You want to be mindful of being present, of being visible, and what body language you're presenting. Like I said, I will frequently sometimes kind of lean into my desk. Again, this isn't a very professional body language right here, right now, right? Sometimes I'm doing this if the camera is off. Again, we want to be mindful that the camera is off, that I'm smiling, that I'm nodding along to what someone's saying, and that if I'm making a point, I'm watching my facial expressions to convey the appropriate meaning to what I'm saying, right? I am demonstrating, through my face what I mean. I personally am very emotive, so sometimes I have to scale it back because, as my colleague will always tell me, Manisha, watch your face, because I will kind of suddenly do that when someone's making an odd point, right? I have to emote a little bit less, but again, with a year and a half and people not owning their screens, remember to emote. Remember to use your voice and project a little bit so that they know you're interested. Again, presentation. So attitude is everything, especially in the virtual environment, right? 40% of the interview is how you present yourself. So check your nerves, do what you need to to ensure that you're presenting your confident self, whether you meditate, whether you self-visualize, whether somebody gives you a pep talk or you do a 3-mile run, whatever it is you need to do to make sure your headspace is clear and focused, do so for the purpose of the interview. Watch your intonation and facial expressions. Like I said, we all have Zoom fatigue and people are suddenly not emoting. And it's, you know, as I've told people, I'm having a really hard time reading what you're trying to show me on camera. So I'll practice that. Some folks have to practice that anyways, right? Like my brother is very facial expression neutral. And so he, for the purposes of the interviews, even in person, he has practiced his different facial expressions just to see what he looks like, so that he is presenting well during an interview. Manage your anxiety. It's okay to be nervous. I, in fact, acknowledge that out loud when I've been interviewed, you know, when they're saying, so Manisha, welcome, have a seat, how are you doing? You know, I'm very excited to be here. I will admit I am nervous, but I'm, you know, I'm super excited to share who I am and my thoughts about this position that you're offering, right? So I acknowledge it so that I own it. It doesn't own me. Be mindful of your voice modulation. Be mindful of how loud you're speaking. Be mindful of slang and filler words. Slang varies regionally and culturally and generationally. My spouse is from the deep South. We have different slang words that we grew up with. And speaking of growing up with, my colleagues are a couple of years younger than me. We have different slang that we're always checking each other on. If you are a or like as your filler words, let's practice that you're minimizing that. I would rather you enunciate and slow down your speech. So there's no reason for you to do I'd rather you take space and still, just like I did, rather than fill it with an and go on. These are things to think about. I know naturally I'm a super fast speaker. So I have practiced over the years how to enunciate and pronunciate so that I'm speaking clearly and it demonstrates confidence in what I'm saying. You also never know whether it's in person or virtually sitting across from you, how their hearing is. So slowing it down and enunciating gives folks space to actually hear your words. Your nonverbal communication. So again, as I mentioned, watch your body posture, body movements in the chair. I have had many a wiggler in the chair. I personally am a wiggler that I've had to like, okay, I'm on camera. Let's make sure, just like as if I'm in person, I'm not wiggling like I normally would. And then prepare yourself. Everything is up for grabs or for during the interview. So read your application, read your supplements or secondaries. Be prepared to talk about anything you wrote about or elaborate on it. Don't assume you're going to remember it. Take the time to review it. So some of you, excuse me, who might have submitted secondaries early August, late July. If your interview is in September, October, it's been over a month since you last saw your application. So take the time to read it so that if somebody asks you a follow-up question, you can do that. If someone is just simply asking you about something, about a secondary prompt and asking you to elaborate, you remember what you wrote because you took that time to review it. So be prepared for that. Everything is fair game, right? From open-ended, maturity, dedication to the profession, or your own challenges and weakness. So take the time to think about what examples would you use to talk about these things. You don't want to be thinking about these on the spot unless the school throws you a complete, curveball or off the wall question. everything else, you should have some kind of examples like strengths, weaknesses, difficult people, how you communicate, how you might be part of a team. Your tell me about yourself, or why this school, or why this health profession. These should not be unexpected questions. These should be something you've prepared for and thought of ideas. And you also want to think about what is it you need to do in terms of preparation. I know that I am, better at writing out responses than I am necessarily at verbally coming up with something. So I actually write down or script out what I'm going to say for some common questions, practice reading it out loud, put that paper aside and just practice talking it. So I'm not aiming for a word for word. That sounds rehearsed, and that does not come across well, especially via virtual interview where it sounds like you're reading. So I'm not trying to hit word for word. I'm trying to help myself remember the gist. So, for some people, they might be confident enough that they use bullet points, right? And those bullet points will be good refreshers. Me, I script, I talk it out, and then I'm just trying to get fluent, right? Fluent in the topics and the examples that I want to bring up. But that's my process. I prepare like I'm preparing for a presentation. I script it, I talk it out loud, practicing how I'm approaching it, not just what I'm saying it. I put it aside. So no flashcards, no bullet points. And I'm just talking, talking out loud. So it's not coming across rehearsed, but it's coming across authentic. So there might be a little that sneaks in. There might be pauses as I think about the next set of phrases or words that I'm going to use. And that authenticity is important, because when you over practice, that sounding of rehearsed does not present well. So you want to practice for confidence, but not where it's a memorized speech that you're giving. That doesn't present very well. I'm going to pause there. Any questions or thoughts that anyone has? All right, I'm going to just keep on going. So in thinking about your examples, and these are some slides that I went through yesterday, but think about how, you're presenting it. Back up what you're saying, give specific examples. There's a lot of acronyms out there, CAR and STAR and PAR. I, specifically used PARC or PARCA. So problem I faced briefly, action I took, results based on what I did, and what did I learn from this? And then depending on the question, if it's appropriate, what might I do in another circumstance, or what did I do when I was presented with a similar situation again? So again, thinking about how I'm organizing my answer so that the listener can follow along. I'm a natural storyteller, so I bounce around a lot. My friends have come to accept that I actually interweave 3 or 4 stories in one. That doesn't present very well in an interview. The interviewers are confused. They don't know how to follow along. They're grasping to try to put together whatever story I'm revealing. So I follow a little formula that keeps the answer organized. It doesn't sound scripted because I am answering authentically, but I'm giving them the processes that so they know how to hear it. Do be sure you're answering the question that was asked. Many a times I've had in mock interviews, folks come in with the answer they want to give, but not necessarily what I'm asking. And so be mindful that you're not so focused on the answer you're trying to give or the example you're trying to share, but you're answering simply what was asked. I had an applicant that very, very much wanted to share everything and anything about the research they had conducted, and would bring that in every interview question I was asked, even if it didn't fit. And that was distasteful because, one, it sounds like they're bragging on themselves, which there's no harm in showing pride, but there is a fine line between bragging ego and pride and appreciation of accomplishment. But the fact that they were trying to talk about the interview and everything didn't make sense. So make sure what you're bringing up is appropriate. But the tell me about yourself, why this school and why this health profession are all different answers with some overlap, but all different answers. So again, make sure you're answering what I'm asking you. If I ask you, can you share an example of a mistake you made? I'm not asking how you saved the world. I'm asking you to really talk about the mistake, but more importantly, what did you learn from it? So I'm listening for, some personal qualities, maturity and readiness. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm asking you to truly talk about it. But in terms of the weakness, failure questions, weakness, failures, mistakes, there's also something else I'm listening for. I'm listening for that you have made a mistake in your life or failed at something or weren't really good at something, and that you knew how to address it. You knew how to grow from it, because there isn't a single health professional school out there that wants their school to be the first time you struggled in life. And so they truly, truly do want to hear about the struggle so they can hear about what you learned or gained or grew from it. So a lot of times with the weakness or challenge question, people want to try to turn it around and make it about a strength. It's not. It's about what I learned from it. That is what you're trying to reveal to me, not how you, showed this great, improvement of something. It's just, yeah, I did that and I realized that was not the right approach. And what I learned was, and that's what I'm listening for. And so show them the person and personality behind that flat, that flat profile that was your application. If you got the interview, here's the thing I should have started this whole thing with. You are at 100%, right? They're looking for reasons to admit you. It's like starting a class with an A. So reveal who you are so that they can, they leave with that impression of understanding who you are, why this school, why this health profession, and how you might fit with the class they're building. Not getting an acceptance isn't always about you doing something wrong. Might be that you may not, one, have revealed you were the best fit, or they're evaluating you against a whole class of folk. But if you're not getting in, if you're getting rejections, we might have to talk about it. I shared a story yesterday. I worked with an applicant who was lucky and privileged enough to get, multiple interviews, got rejected multiple times right after the interview, came to see me before another interview, and we talked about it. We did a mock interview, and 30 seconds in, I saw the issue. This person had so much nervous energy, so much going on, that they were all over the place, no coherence in their interview. So we talked about calming strategies. We talked about what to do, what made them feel confident. And I'm happy to say they employed some of these tools and techniques, and suddenly got 3 acceptances with their next 3 interviews. So do those practices. We do mocks. You can come in and do a quick mock during drop-ins, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 3, Wednesdays from 12 to 2. You'll meet, an advisor for 10, 15 minutes. We can get a couple questions in, get some feedback, move on. Or you can schedule a 30-minute appointment where we can kind of go through the whole interview and you get a little bit more time with the advisor. but do that. Do it with people who mentor you. Do it with us at HPA. Practice with yourselves. If you're going to be doing an asynchronous interview, practice what it's like talking to a screen and answering questions. See how you respond, because looking down, looking away, looking up, the whole time during an interview does change the voice that's being recorded. In the past, I used to say during phone interviews, the more you move, the more distant you sound in the phone. You know, same thing goes for a virtual interview. You want to make sure the speaker is catching everything. And in asynchronous, it could be hard to find a focal point. So create that focal point as if you're talking. I've had people, you know, stick a piece of paper with a fake person, a picture, a stuffy, something that they can focus on, so that as they're answering questions, they have a focal point and they're mimicking, you know, this person or this object being who they're talking to. But do practice, right? Do practice. And the first opportunity to practice, if you haven't scheduled a mock or are coming to drop-ins for interviews, this Friday, we are conducting mock interviews. You know, the priority will be current applicants. We do have another one for all health professions coming up in November, and a DVM specific one coming up in late October. So be, you know, look out for those. But this Friday is your first opportunity. You know, don't be shy. This is your opportunity to get, you know, positive feedback for you to strengthen your interviewing. And some of you did mention you have interviews come up. So we want to make sure you're presenting yourself, your authentic self, with as much confidence as possible. So that is all I have in terms of a formal presentation today. We do have some time for some questions. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.